On page 1 of the rules of golf, the spirit of the game is discussed as well as a player's responsibility to abide by these rules. It's the true spirit of sportsmanship. It says all players shall conduct themselves in a disciplined manner, demonstrating courtesy and sportsmanship at all times, irrespective of how competitive they may be. This is the spirit of the game of golf. Golf has been touted for centuries as a gentleman's game, and I believe rightly so. For champion Hall of Famer Bob Bentley, the spirit of the golf game has exemplified his entire professional career. And although Bob got a late start in playing the game, he made up for it quickly, turning pro just a couple of years after taking up the game seriously. With his wife and caddy, Jane, at his side, he won the Utah Open in 1979 and went on to win state open titles in Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, and Idaho, piling up more than 75 tournament victories and over $1 million in career earnings along the way. Bob's biggest win as a pro came when he won the 1993 Bank of Boston Classic on the Senior PGA Tour. He was a gentleman amongst gentlemen and on top of his game. But then tragedy struck. Bob was seriously and permanently injured when his car was rear-ended by an underinsured driver. And as a result, he hasn't been able to golf or enjoy one of his other great talents, painting, primarily wildlife oils and portraits, since then. No more golf, no more travel, no more painting. In an instant, Bob's livelihood and way of life ceased to exist. Despite the trauma and hardship, he and his wife were determined to soldier on. As hardworking, responsible, and honest as ever, they thought they could handle these things themselves. They filed a claim with their own auto insurance company, a first-party claim, and assumed they'd be treated fairly and squarely. You know, just like in the spirit of golf. But instead, their insurance company didn't abide by that gentleman's spirit of golf. No, they stalled, they repeatedly lost paperwork, and they wouldn't even return his phone calls. So finally, Bob and Jane, the team Betley, had had enough. They called Siegfried and Jensen. Sadly, this is a scenario that the attorneys at Siegfried and Jensen know all too well. They saw to it that the insurance company did its job and compensated Bob and Jane as required, but then they took it a step further. Mitch Jensen, partner at Siegfried and Jensen, and State Senator Steve Urquhart wrote and passed new state legislation protecting the rights of individuals in first-party insurance claims. In 2010, SB 62 was signed into Utah law, mandating that insurance companies must provide a written response within a reasonable period of time. Today, the Insider Exclusive shows how the law firm of Siegfried and Jensen, the Utah legislature, and everyday Americans like Bob and Jane Betley can make the legal system work. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Salt Lake City at the law firm of Siegfried and Jensen. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mitch Jensen of the law firm of Siegfried and Jensen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Bob Bentley was a professional golfer, and tell us a little bit about the case.
Well, Bob, very interesting story, and he'll tell you more about this, took up golf at a late age for a golfer, his mid-20s. He was a motorcycle cop in Ogden, Utah, and took an interest in the game, and the guy's just been blessed with way too much talent. He can paint, he's renowned for his painting, and he's played every level, the highest level of golf. And he took up golf and succeeded at it. He won a lot of senior tour events, and at the time of his accident, he was recovering successfully from, you know, as a lot of seniors do who are on the senior tour. They've had a knee surgery, they've had a shoulder surgery, and they were able to recover from that. Good surgery, good recovery. That doesn't interfere with their golf game very long. They get back on the course and they get on with it. And but in this automobile accident that he suffered about 5 years ago, he injured his back. Now, injuring your back, that's a different problem in golf. It's much more difficult to recover from that.
Right. He was hit hard.
He was hit hard from behind by somebody who fell asleep at the wheel and rear-ended him at a stop sign. And immediately he started experiencing back pain, so severe that over the years his spine became twisted from muscle spasms and so forth. So now he has, instead of having a straight back, he's got a significant curve in his back. He's been through every method of treatment, surgeries and therapies and acupuncture. He's sought every available remedy to no avail. And it destroyed his golf game, took him not only away from playing the game, but away from his significant teaching of the game, and really turned his life around. If he weren't such a positive guy, he could have ended up in depression but he's really a hero that way.
He didn't even want to use lawyers to resolve his situation, because here was a guy that had automobile insurance, and the individual who hit him was underinsured. Was that it?
Right.
He not uninsured, he was underinsured. Bob had these huge medical bills. He presented them to his automobile insurance company that's supposed to take care of him and his medical bills. And what happened?
Right. Well, we all know that marketing insurance is best done with the warm slogans. You're in good hands. We're your good neighbors.
Yeah.
We're there.
Right.
Okay. And everybody else can, they've heard those slogans enough that they know who they belong to.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the person responsible for Bob's injury had the minimum coverages, not enough coverages required by law, but whatever coverage is required, she had the least amount that you were required by law to have.
Yeah.
And they saw that Bob's injuries were significant, and they offered that policy to him, which didn't even approach paying his medical bills.
Yeah.
Well, most people are unaware that their own insurance steps up when the responsible driver's insurance is inadequate. And in this case, Bob's own insurance, he had a significant policy. He was a loyal policy holder for years, and when he made that claim with them, they denied it. And
what was the reason for that?
well, the reason for that, I think, is in Utah, an insurance company, prior to the legislation that grew out of Bob Bentley's injury, insurance companies who insure you are never obligated to pay more than the contract of insurance that you have with them.
Right.
So there's a limit on the amount of their exposure, regardless of how severe your injuries are. And what they do is they try to discourage people from pursuing their claim by delaying the claim and denying the claim.
And that they did that.
And they did that, and they had hoped that Bob would be desperate enough,
Right.
like a lot of people are, to accept a low-ball offer.
To settle it.
Right.
And that's their MO, isn't it?
That's the real story here. This is a nationwide problem, and in Utah it was particularly acute because of the way the laws are written here. And so one of the things that Bob's most proud of is the legislation that grew out of his case.
Right. And this is, you saw the bigger problem. You saw that they were screwing over the little guy, weren't they?
Yeah.
And you had to put a stop to that. And as a result of that, this case is more than just an accident case. It spawned new legislation, didn't it?
Right. This case illustrates an epidemic problem with insurance, where when you buy insurance, it's like you putting your money in the insurance company bank. And when it comes time for you to make a claim, you're in a fiduciary relationship with your insurance company. You expect them to step up and pay your bills and pay your lost wages and do what you contracted for them to do. And in this law office, we have about 19 attorneys. We handle a lot of claims, and we see a lot of abuse by insurance companies towards their own insureds, delaying the payment of claims and minimizing their damages so that they can get off with paying less.
Yes.
And so Bob Bentley's story is one of many. In his case is exemplary of a big problem, and it took a guy like Bob Bentley and a problem with his own insurance company to bring the attention needed to the legislature to solve the problem.
And fortunately today we have with us a Utah State Senator, Steve Urquhart,
Right.
who's going to be on the program right now to talk about that new legislation to help solve this problem. So let's bring him on right now. It's my great pleasure to introduce Utah State Senator Steve Urquhart. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here because along with Mitch, you got a bill passed that is going to protect the people of Utah a lot better than it did before the bill was passed, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Tell us a little bit about Senate Bill 62.
Senate Bill 62, the whole purpose of it is to make sure that insurance companies deal with their own insureds fairly and quickly.
And what does that mean in simple English? Because when I read the report on it, it said that they had to respond to them rather quickly. What does that mean? You got a time frame?
Well, prior to this, there was no time frame in which
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
They
And
never
so-
had to give back to you.
Yeah, so I tend to think that most trial attorneys, most insurance companies operate in good faith, but
Yeah.
for the ones who chose not to, they could make money by sitting on claims and delaying them, and so that's
And that's
what
not
was,
illegal. That wasn't illegal.
It wasn't
before.
illegal, and so that's the whole point of the bill. Is we started out by saying they had to deal with it in 30 days, and a couple of the insurance companies squawked. We said, okay, 60 days, and so we kept stretching out, saying, okay, well, what do you think is fair? And so we
Yeah.
brought a lot of people to the table and had great discussions.
Yeah.
There were a couple insurance companies that were always outliers and fought us to the very end, but this is something where now they have to deal with it very promptly. In 60 days, they have to give an initial response, and they have to come close to what it actually is at the end if this goes to arbitration.
Yeah.
And if they're off, then there will be some penalties, rather minor penalties, some costs that they're going to pay.
Yeah.
And this is a starting point, and if some of these companies continue to operate in bad faith, then we'll have to revisit it and increase the penalties.
For insurance companies who operate in bad faith, if they have to hire a lawyer, a law firm, do they have to pay their legal fees as punitive damages?
They do. They have to pay the fees up to $7,500.
Could you have an insurance commissioner here in the state, like every state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could the insurance commissioner have enacted a requirement for anybody being licensed to operate in this state where they had to operate, or did this need new legislation?
It needed new legislation. I mean, again, insurance, it depends on what the state laws are, and so here, our law, it simply did not put any kind of time requirement or fairness argument in the law, and so the insurance department would not have been able to do that on its own. That's why we needed to make this change.
So the law today is they have to give you a response within 60 days? Is that right?
Well, yeah, I actually don't know the time. It was a negotiated time, but it's a fair amount of time for them to evaluate a claim from the time it's submitted to them. They have to make a fair offer, and then the resolution of the case, if it goes to trial, is compared to that offer, the difference between what the insurance company has offered their own insured and what a jury or an arbitrator awarded. And if they're off by a significant amount, then they pay the penalties.
I like what your law firm did. You know, you took a single case and you made it into a new law. Well, thanks for listening to the people and everybody involved, and thank you very much for being on the program. Now it is my greatest pleasure to introduce Bob and his wife Jane. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
You were a gifted athlete to begin with,
Yes, I played a lot of ball in high school and college.
so you liked it immediately.
Yes, I did.
And you were a police officer, right? Motorcycle officer at the
Yes,
time?
motorcycle officer for Ogden City, and
Right.
very proud to have been.
And continued to be an officer?
Yes.
For how much longer?
Probably about 2 years after I started playing golf, and then
Because then the golfing money started to kick in.
well, there wasn't that much money, but I did turn professional at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas.
Now, your wife, Jane, was your caddy on the circuit, right?
Yes.
And how did you meet her?
She was a computer person at the railroad, and I walked through and I saw her, and I said, why don't you introduce me to that young lady there? And we got introduced, and,
Yeah.
and I tried to give her a golf lesson. She stood me up, and I tried to give her another golf lesson. She stood me up, and
Yeah.
finally I said, you know, I'm going to the Arizona Open, and I've won it once, and it's a great tournament, it's a big tournament. Would you like to go down? And she did. And first day out, she says, I can't stand behind the ropes, and she says, can I caddy? And I says, yeah. So I paid my caddy off, and she caddied, and we won the tournament. So yeah, it was pretty.
Good luck.
Yeah, it was great.
Talk to us about what happened in this accident.
I had just come home. My knees were hurting me, and I was having trouble walking on the tour. So I had my knees operated on, and I was practicing getting ready to play again. But then I got hit when I was stopped at a stop sign. A woman
Somebody
came
rear-ended you.
rear-ended me.
Yeah.
And she hit me about 45 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, and I'd hit my knees, and I was so afraid that I'd damage my knees. We rushed right to the hospital and had the knees x-rayed, but then all of a sudden my back went 32 degrees out of line.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem started. We couldn't get that back. I went through therapy after therapy after
Right.
therapy trying to get it back.
And this is costing you money, obviously.
oh, yeah, I couldn't play.
Yeah.
Absolutely could not play.
And you have, like most Americans, you had an auto insurance policy, didn't
Yes,
you? And this person who hit you was underinsured, wasn't it?
underinsured.
So you filed with your insurance company, and what happened?
Well, nothing, actually. I mean, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They would not participate in the
Do you have an
injury at all.
agent? You had an agent?
Yes.
And what did the agent say to you?
Well, he called and asked how I was.
Yeah.
And Jenny says, well, he's going to have surgery.
Yeah.
And he says, well, then he called back a little later, a couple weeks or a month later, and said, you know, we'll offer you $8,000.
Right.
I mean, that's not even coming close to what we've taken out of our pocket.
Is this your agent was kind of a friend of yours?
No.
No.
I
you
had
didn't
no
know
idea
that.
who it was.
So you were insulted, basically.
Well, disappointed.
Yeah.
More than anything. You know, I mean, $8,000, and we'd spent probably $35,000 out of our pocket for therapy, and it just we were not getting any help or any participation from the insurance company at all.
So what was your next step? How did you end up here at Siegfried and
Well,
Jensen?
Jenny suggested that we call somebody that can give us a hand with it, and I didn't know Mitch, but luckily I called down and Mitch answered.
Yeah.
I got right through to him, and he recognized my name and asked if I was the golfer, and I said, yeah, and I'm not playing. I said, I can't play because of the accident.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they took the case on and absolutely did a home run for us. We couldn't have done it without them.
And as a result, the new legislation was passed to protect folks like yourself who have problems with their insurance companies.
Right.
I was shocked to hear Senator Urquhart say that prior to this legislation, there was no time limit that the
No, there
insurance
wasn't.
companies could back. No time
Absolutely
limit.
nothing. And the thing, you know, when they offered $8,000, there's people who would be in a position and say, well, you know what? I mean, we got bills to pay and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take the
it.
$8,000,
Yeah.
but it just, we couldn't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd taken a lot out of our pocket already, and $8,000 wouldn't even come close to what was going out on medical right there.
Right. Now, Jane, Bob's also a great artist. Couldn't even paint, could he?
No, the back pain was so terrible that he couldn't sit, couldn't stand. It's been a very long process and a very long time to get where he could do a few things. He just barely got back into doing some paintings. Obviously the pain in the back injury is is still there after all this. But yeah, for about 6 years he couldn't.
How are you today, Bob?
Well, I can't play.
Yeah.
I can't. I do some teaching, golf lessons, but
Painting? You can
painting,
paint?
I can't sit for more than about two hours, and then I have to get up and stretch and kind of work out, get my back. So it's,
Well, I can tell you, America's going to know more about your story, primarily because your case wasn't just an accident case. It resulted in new legislation that is going to help a lot of Americans, a lot of Utahans at least, so that, you know, they don't have the same problems that you did. I want to thank both of you for spending some time with us today. Your story is important, and a lot of people are going to know about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
I've done a lot of shows, and rarely have I seen a show where a law firm took a case, who was just an accident case, you know, that affected you greatly, and turned it into new legislation. And I'm just so amazed, you know, I think it's incredible what your law firm did. I don't want to sound too complimentary, but it's great because your case resulted in other people being protected too, didn't it?
It did, and you know, I became such a good friend of Bob's during the representation of him, and admire him so much, and got really angry at his insurance company for the way he was being treated, and you know, it was common, and it was upsetting, and Bob's case came along. I said, enough's enough.
Yeah.
And we're going to go up and do something about this.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for being on the program, Bob, and Mitch.
It's our pleasure, and Jenny and I owe a whole bunch to Siegfried and Jensen and Mitch, because they really did us a job, and we really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you very much for being on the program. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.